Mr. Guy Bucey, how are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Are you kidding, man? I've been dying to get you back. Well, not back. I've been dying to have you on the show because you and I spoke together in Chicago before the whole world went into a little bit of a
Crazy.
yeah, a sneeze guard festival, as it might be. Yeah. Hey, guys, some people might not know who you are. So if you don't mind, tell us who the heck you are and why you would be speaking to the world of, professional contractors who build cabinets, who do architectural millwork, build furniture.
Sure, yeah. So
yeah,
I'm the co-owner and CEO of Innovabed. Right. We make multifunctional furniture for the hospitality, student housing, commercial industries, basically. We've got a 100,000 square foot facility with 100 employees. And we do right around 20 million in sales per year. So been around to a few places, had the opportunity to talk at a lot of different organizations, people's companies, and had a really, been blessed to be able to have people come to our company and tour our facility and do those things. And I sprinkle a little bit of my lean knowledge and lean experiences and my time in Japan at the Toyota production facilities and all that stuff.
And military, I understand.
Yeah, so I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years, and that's what I did before Innova.
I can tell by your haircut.
Yeah.
I think you and I have the same haircut. I wasn't in the military, though. Hey, I have another question, though, that's not on. If somebody's listening to this as a podcast, they're not going to understand the question. But if they watch it as a YouTube video, what's that say behind you?
Yeah, so that's Mixed Breed Brewing, which is my one of my side projects that I'm doing right now. Me and a few friends have started a brewing company, and we have a brewery located in upstate New York.
Gilderland.
That's where I'm doing the podcast right now. Yeah.
So let me just paint a picture here of what I just heard. Ex-military veteran, now runs a 100-employee, $20 million specialty furniture cabinetry shop, right?
Yep.
And just for fun, you kicked off a brewery?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's why you're on the show.
Yeah, right. I guess so.
Yeah. I do remember your story from Chicago, and it was pretty compelling. It wasn't always like this, though, was it? What were the early days at, were you always a cabinet maker? Were you always in the finished wood trades? Why don't you take us back to the beginning and tell us how that's affected really the topic of today's lean leadership, and you're an expert at leadership, but take us back there so that people understand how you now come to be so casual. It's 1 p.m, you're sitting at your microbrewery waiting for the doors to open. We're talking about your 100-employee facility that's obviously running. Get us to today.
Yeah, so obviously Marine Corps background was, joined the Marine Corps when I was 18. Did 2 deployments to Iraq. My first time in Iraq, I was just one of the guys in the team, more singular, more for myself, younger guy. After coming back and having that experience, obviously the Marine Corps loves to put you into leadership positions, and ultimately that's what the Marine Corps does. They teach you how to be a leader and develop you as a leader, correct? So as I finished out as a sergeant in the Marine Corps, I went through being a team leader, squad leader, platoon sergeant, et cetera, and got really decent chops in leadership.
At the pointy edge of the spear too.
Yes, right, exactly.
Yeah, no pressure at all day to day.
Yeah, no. It's it's very funny, and honestly, a lot of my kind of mentality behind my leadership and a civilian capacity or at my companies now, it isn't life and death, but ultimately, we ate, slept, breathe, eat, sleep with one another. And it's much more family oriented. And we bring a lot of that aspect to Innova as well. And hopefully the brewery, once we start getting some employees and stuff here.
Yeah.
But I actually utilized woodworking and beer making as 2 therapeutic hobbies for myself when I got home from Fallujah my first time.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, which was pretty cool and pretty neat, and kind of idle hands, especially going through an experience like that. You got to kind of keep yourself focused and keep yourself moving forward, or you can spiral out of control pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, not to go off on a side tangent, but head trash can get in the way of success or just movement. It can keep us stuck, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So found an opportunity with some of my grandfather's old hand planes, and just kind of went down the rabbit hole of all that stuff.
Wow.
And I ended up starting Ellsworth Bucey Furniture, DBA, doing business as, and a little LLC out of my basement. and started doing that. And I actually applied for a part-time position at Inova to just start to learn the woodworking industry business a little bit while I was building my own.
Okay.
And so I was literally out of the Marine Corps 3 days. I went to my first and only interview after going out of the Marine Corps. And the current plant manager at the time was just desperate for leadership, saw my military background, and hired me on as a floor supervisor for a small little 4-man sub-assembly area
Right.
at Inova. And it was, full-time job, salaried position. And I just had bought a house, had a kid on the way, was recently married. And
oh, yeah, that math lines up fast, doesn't it?
And kind of took the job.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into Inova. I very, very quickly found out that the civilian world is not the military world. And holy cow, people's expectations and personalities and things are drastically different. And what motivates people is drastically different than the military, and have been just kind of building and going from there.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be a very sharp contrast. I wasn't in the military, but thank you for everything you've done, and to you and all your mates out there. But there's a certain mindset that comes along with that. A mission mindset and a safety mindset and protocols. But some people, they're just showing up for a paycheck, a job. You're on a sub-assembly crew. These might be other people who are not really laborers, but could be laborers. Like it's not a formulated team. So how was the friction there when you showed up with nice high and tight haircut, fresh from the front lines, and you wanted to get them, glue and drawer faces together, or bed components, following a military protocol?
I'll tell you, it wasn't easy, right? And it wasn't easy. At this point, I was really good at being able to lead people in the Marine Corps. Obviously, in the Marine Corps, everybody is already trained to just listen to your superiors and those type of things. So that's kind of out of the way, right? Whereas in the civilian world, people don't really care what you say. It doesn't matter who you are. Yeah. So in the Marine Corps, they're very big on gaining respect, though, no matter what, right? You never wanted to be the leader that everybody had to listen to just because they had to listen to them. But you were the guy that never showed up, never put in the time, never put in the energy, never put in the work. And, it was do as I say, not as I do type of person, right?
You have to earn it.
Yeah. And, so what I found was usually when things are hard or difficult or things like that, I kind of end up reflecting on myself. I've never been a person that likes to blame others for issues that I see. I've always been very focused on looking at, hey, what can I do to improve this process? And a lot of the times that's just, to be very corny, that's doing the best that you can do, period. Right. So when I first got in there, I got my team together. We kind of, created a nice little cohesive unit, and then we worked our butts off, period. And I kind of turned our little section into the best run, most well-oiled portion of Inova at that time.
Okay.
And I think that's, that's all you can do. So like, when I talk to people in different management positions at companies, it doesn't matter if you're the owner, it doesn't matter if you're the sub-assembly supervisor. You've got to focus on your area and do the best that you can do in your area. And if you are at the right company or you are at the right place, they are going to notice your efforts in that area. Where people really start to crumble to the ground and things really start to get off track is when you start focusing and telling other departments or other areas, what they need to do and how much, like if they did this, this would help, et cetera. Focus on you in your area, period. Right.
Personal responsibility.
Oh yeah. Personal responsibility. If your leadership is, on the correct path, they are going to notice that, and they're going to make the corrections and make, the appropriate decisions that need to be made. Or hopefully you do such a good job that you eventually get into one of those positions where you can then change the course of that company.
Yeah. Do you find that takes a lot of patience on your part? Because you've got a lot of energy. I can tell talking to you, and I've met you face to face. You've got a lot of energy. I think I have energy. You've got way more. But do you find that takes patience on your part, where you have to just take a deep breath, inhale, and just?
We're talking a decade worth of effort right now. You know what I mean? Literally, we're talking a decade worth of effort to get to this point, and it's still not even close to being done. Right? Like, there's still a ton to do. But one of the things that drives me so nuts with, our younger workforce, I won't say millennials, I won't say whatever generation, I'm a millennial, right? Like, I think that that's crazy. I think we are where we are as a society right now, and ultimately past generations have created the current generation. So
Sure.
next time, next time you again want to point the finger at somebody else and say, oh, millennials stink, or this next generation stinks, or whatever, take a look in the mirror, because you're the one that created it, right? So like, that's why focusing on ourselves is so much more important than blaming it on outside circumstances or things that you can't control. But I will say, I have noticed that, the younger population has a much more instant gratification type of mentality.
Right.
And they think that just because they've been somewhere and they've done a good job for 4 months, that they should now be the CEO of the company, right? And it's like, no, you've done a great job. You've been here 4 months. Like, let's continue.
You don't, this is the life cycle of a fruit fly. You don't.
Yeah, literally. Like, so it is kind of doing that. But yeah, I mean, patience is everything. And ultimately, how you continue to stay patient is creating goals and objectives for yourselves, right? So, for me, it was becoming the best supervisor I could be at Innova and making my team the strongest team in that place. By doing that, it opened up an opportunity for me to lead a larger area. And then I was able to bring that to that next area. And then I was able to ultimately see that, hey, I've got some strong ability. I could probably become a plant manager, et cetera. And I worked towards that. And ultimately, I was in the correct company with the correct people that saw that ability in me and gave me the opportunity.
I just raised my hand to ask you a question. I can't believe I did that. Sorry. And it's okay. So take me back 10 years ago, though. And it's a long time ago. You said it's 10 years ago that you started at Innova?
Yeah.
And by the way, you're now the what position at Innova, just for clarity?
CEO.
Oh, CEO. Yeah. So you're no longer the sub-assembly head. You're the lead. You're no longer the lead assembler of the springs on a Murphy bed. You're CEO. Right. Okay. But if you can recall, what was one of, and the reason I ask this is because I want to paint a picture of people that I talked to who are listening to this show.
Sure.
They're in a shop where they want to make changes, and they're listening to shows like this. They're reading books. They're trying to listen to, you do a lot of keynotes. Maybe they've heard you before. Yeah. And they're struggling, like a lot of us are, is where do I start? My team didn't read the book. My team didn't see Guy Bucey speak. My team doesn't listen to Dom's podcast. What did you do? Do you remember coming home to your wife and saying, honey, I think I'm just going to do this because this team is, a mess. What did you do?
Sure. So basically at one point I was a co-plant manager or something. It was a very interesting time for us. But I just, we'd be out there and there would be piles of work everywhere and just kind of never seemed like work in progress, right? Massive amounts everywhere. Of overproduction and all that good stuff, right? And I'm just like, God, there's got to be a better way. What the heck is going on here? And funny enough, I started like looking around. I had known about Six Sigma at the time and kind of that whole aspect, that whole process. I was very focused in project management. I'd been looking into getting my PMP at that time, project management professional certification.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm very kind of just practical and common sense oriented. And so I hate stuff that like you have to spend 10 years educating yourself and then, spend another 10 years, with practical application. And education is great, right? And I love education, and there's things that are great about education, but man, there's a balance between it, right?
Yeah.
I've got family members that, they use education as an excuse to never actually have to get out there and become a part of the workforce, right? So it's, it's great that you're book smart, but can you apply any of that to the real world? And so I've always been very kind of sensitive to that. And I think the military does a really good job of classroom training versus practical application. And being able to utilize what you learn, mainly because like, for me specifically, it was life or death. Like it'd be great that, you knew every statistic about or stat regarding a machine gun, but you got to be able to use that thing when it comes down to it. Right. So like,
you don't have to calculate the trajectory. You have to know enough about getting it there.
Exactly. And that's like, you could be the best, most well-read business person on the planet and understand graphs and charts and supplies and demands and all these cool like business buzzwords. But what have you ever done for a business? Have you ever created a successful business? Have you ever created an unsuccessful business, right? Like you actually got to get out there and do this and really, put the rubber to the road, for another corny statement, right? Like, and really get going. So I started to look into it. I started to look Six Sigma. It looked so convoluted and non-value added that I was like, God, there's just got to be like a simpler way here, right? And I'm sorry for Six Sigma people, but I'll tell you, it is crap. in my opinion. It's the United States way of overcomplicating something that is not complicated. And we love to do that with everything that we do. We love to do that by creating a million different roles inside of our offices and justifying what we do as being something that's value added when it's not. And, we talked about ego when we were talking about a while ago. Once we get over our egos and we realize that, we're here because we haven't figured out a better way of doing something, then life gets a lot easier.
I got you on that one. I believe that I have to have enough ego to put it aside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Have enough ego to let somebody else take the floor. Have enough ego to hear somebody else's idea. Have enough ego to implement somebody else's idea. It doesn't have to be mine. It just has to be what works best.
Yep. Right. Exactly. And that's what it was. So, getting back to the point, I basically stumbled across Fast Cap and Paul Akers.
Oh, love that stuff.
Love it. Yeah. And he had a plethora of YouTube videos and just kind of, obviously 2-second lean. If you've never read anything else about lean, read 2-second lean.
Or get the audio. He's got the audio in like 19 different languages on his website. There's no excuse.
And it's free.
And it's free. Yeah.
Zero excuse. And that just basically was like, holy cow, this is what I have been looking for. This is exactly it. And I need to be able to do that, and we need to be able to implement that here. So I just went down the lean rabbit hole like crazy and ended up emailing. And Paul was like such a cool dude. I think I saw that he was going to run an Ironman or training for an Ironman or something like that. And I had actually been in the process of looking to run an Ironman myself. I think I just reached out to him one day on like Facebook Messenger. Was like, hey, did you ever run that Ironman? And he's like, no, I never did. And I was like, well, I'm getting ready to run one at Lake Placid next year. And he was like, okay, I'll do it. And I was like, what?
That was it. Yeah. I'll tell you what, setting an appointment with Paul Akers is an experience like no one else has ever had.
Yeah.
He thinks lean so much.
Oh yeah. He's unbelievable.
Yeah. And the clarity and simplicity.
Yeah. So we started to implement that. We started to do some things. And then luckily we had gone through some issues and through some trials, and we had gone through a really, really bad scenario of just an order that was completely ridiculous, down to the wire. I mean, I basically worked till 4:00 that night to finish panels, went home for 2 hours, packed my bags, came back, loaded it onto a truck, and then flew out to the place where we were doing it, got there, unloaded the truck, did the install, and got the install in. And I went full Marine Corps on it because we had to get it done. But I think I had 6 people walk off the job site because I just had to hammer them into the ground in order to get the job done.
Right. And that doesn't work.
That's not sustainable.
It doesn't work in the civilian world. No,
it's not sustainable at all. And I mean, personally, I don't want to live that way. And I went back and just basically was like, Lauren, who was sole owner at the time, I basically came back and was just like, listen, you either allow me an opportunity to do things the way that I would like to do them, right, or I'm sorry, but this is it for me. I'm not going to live my life like this. This is crazy. And he completely threw his hands up, and I was like, what do you have to lose? It can't get worse than this, And it was like,
what about the culture? Like, I'm coming back to the people on this. The people that are there to get a paycheck. The people that are there because what they really think about is coaching their kid baseball team or hitting the couch or playing, World of Warcraft, whatever they're into. Yeah. How do you get them on board with these bigger ideas that you've got in your mind?
So a lot of them you won't be able to. And it stinks, and there's plenty of variables that are in place there, right? So it's either they're never going to work out, and ultimately, like nowadays, they never would have been hired to begin with,
right?
So they're just not going to work out, or they're just so jaded by the scenario that's been there for so long that they can't get over it. They're just so far gone. They're just so pissed off, just so beyond repair that unfortunately you've got to split the seas in order to do that. And, when we drew our line in the sand, which is what I call it, we let about 30% of our population go. And it was really rough. We stopped making justifications for it, and we ripped the Band-Aid off. Yeah.
Do you, this is a very difficult thing for people to get their head wrapped around. And I understand, because let me paint the scenario, because I've been there myself. This is the guy I hired. He was with me when I was at 0 in revenue and 0 in jobs. And he was there when we kind of barely had work, and he took a week off when we were empty and didn't have work to do. And he's been with me, and now we're at 250 grand, 300 grand. But he's not the guy I need to be $1 million shop or a $2 million shop. But he was there. He waited for paychecks. He helped me out. He helped me move. I bought him pizza. I know his wife. I know his kids. The reality is he's not right for my team anymore. How do I overcome that?
Yeah. So, I mean, number one, you've got to give, I say it very like quickly, right? Like we got rid of our people and those type of things. But basically I generate, and I always create a scenario for no excuses. So if somebody comes in,
taking notes, man, hold on. Scenario is a big word. Scenario for no excuses. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So, we have a person that shows up late to work, right?
I love it. Okay.
What is your tardiness policy? They show up late. He's always late. Well, what does always late mean? Do we have a policy in place so people know how many times they're allowed to be late? Again, there's a plethora of excuses in that statement. And that's what you're creating, right? So number one, you reflect internally. Hey, is our system, am I, communicating things properly? Do we have a good system in place that's, not allowing people to be confused at these scenarios? Because they might have come in for their job and nobody ever told them that they couldn't be late.
Yeah.
Right. And that might sound mind blowing, like, duh, you're not supposed to be late. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that today.
Yeah. That's the kitchen table they grew up at.
Yeah. And you can either be a part of the process of educating and getting a better workforce, or you can be a part of a process of continuing to just complain and nag and whine about a particular workforce. I like to be a person that, I can go home and put my head on my pillow at night and be like, you know what? I actually helped the workforce population today. I didn't complain about it. I didn't do this and I didn't do that. And I didn't say, oh, America sucks and everybody in America sucks and, woe is me and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, I created a policy today that made it so there's no excuses in my facility. And hopefully if that person leaves my facility, they'll take that little tidbit with them to the next place they go,
somewhere else. Right? I can't agree with you more. And time is one of the things that bugs me the most. And I hesitate to do this, but I have a list of job site rules that's in my book. That's all I'm going to say. But I couldn't agree with you more, because unless there's job site rules, it's a free-for-all. What do I think is best? And I can't get mad at George because he thinks break time is at 4:00, not 4:15 or whatever. It doesn't matter. But I have to have a rule that says this is break time. This is when we start. This is safety. This is whatever. And then I have to enforce it evenly across everybody, whether it's my brother who works in the company, my brother-in-law who works at the company, or my dad who works at the company.
Exactly.
Everybody's got to follow the same rules.
And it's really funny because so as you cultivate a leadership group, right, which I spend, a ton of time on, and now they're great and they know, and spent years and years creating a leadership group, right? So that they understood, number one, training them how to be good leaders. And number two, training them how to be good leaders for our company, right? Getting back to that $300,000 company versus $1 million company. Well, if you want to become $1 million company, then you need to know what type of leadership you want there too. Don't go back to blaming Bob, who you're saying isn't a part of your $1 million plan. Well, have you trained him to become $1 million part, a part of your $1 million plan? So again, you got to eliminate the excuses.
Yeah.
And it's really cool when you do that. Your leadership, right, will come in like, this guy's always late. Well, do we have a policy in place? Well, yeah, but he always finds the loophole in the policy. Well, then great. You know what he's doing? He's helping us make our policy ironclad. And unfortunately, you might have some people who are malicious and they are playing the system, but let them play it. We get better and better and better. And then ultimately they're going to stick their foot in their mouth and they're not going to be able to play it anymore. And they go away. And we become 10 times better during that process.
And I would have to add, or actually, don't allow me to add this. I would ask you, is there power in letting somebody go when they don't play by the rules? And how does that get viewed by the rest of the crew?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it does. And I think when, number one, it shows that you are going to sustain the policies and the standards and things that you've put in place. It's the typical thing. Like if you're a pushover and anybody can basically do whatever they want, then everybody's going to do whatever they want. I hate to use the analogy, but a lot of times it's like, it's like your child. Your child's going to go as far as they can possibly go, or like you tell them, hey, we're not doing that, right? Like they'll push the boundaries and they'll try and try and try until No more.
You were raised in a different house than I was. I was corrected a little more severely than a
Yes.
conversation, but I know what you mean.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what it is. I mean, by nature, people are always pushing boundaries and always trying to, take something as far as they can go. You got to draw the line. What I really like to talk about is those people who we feel we can't survive without. And everybody has those people, right? It's like,
Right.
What would I do if they ever left? Well, you'd pull up your pants and you'd move on and you'd continue on. Yeah, it might stink because now you've got to actually put in some work and some effort and figure out what it is that they were doing. But if they're a negative impact on your culture and the people in your company, they are far worse than any, magic fairy dust thing that you think they do for you.
Yeah.
And I always use our CNC operator as we had a CNC operator one time, and he was the only person that could run our CNC. Nobody else knew how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would we do if he was ever gone? And he was probably the most corrosive person and just the most negative person in our entire facility. And the second that we let him go, like the rest of the population just grew and came up. Yeah, lifted up. And it was one of the best things we ever did.
It's so difficult to explain. I mean, you've seen it, so you've had the benefit of seeing it. In what I do, I get to see it time and again, but it's very hard for somebody who gets out of bed every day, drives to the shop, goes into the shop, works in the shop and comes back home as the owner of the business. I mean, but they've got George at the CNC. No offense to anybody who's got a guy named George, but George is a cancer.
Yeah.
George has got a bad attitude. Maybe George was your 200K guy, but now that you're trying to get to 400K, 500K, $1 million, $2 million, he's not your guy anymore. And you have to decide what your team's going to look like.
Yep.
Thankfully, we talk about that a lot on this show. And I'm so happy you're saying these things, Guy, because I don't have to say them on this episode.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, your people are everything. And then how you treat your people are everything. And so our number one objective is to grow our people. So we send them, after I got back from Japan, which completely blew my mind, we've sent tons of our people to Japan afterwards.
Really?
And that's where when you said, well, they haven't read this, they haven't done this, they haven't done that. Well, why haven't they? So if you want people to get on board, drink the Kool-Aid, be a part of it, well, then allow them to seek out education beyond just the stuff that you're spewing out of your mouth. Give them your tools and your resources. But here it comes back to ego, right? I hope and pray every single day that 15 people at that company become better at lean than me. And it would be the greatest thing that ever occurred, right? It literally would. It wouldn't hurt my feelings. I wouldn't be like, oh no, I got to be the supreme leader of lean. Heck no. Let them become. We're a business. We're about making money. We're about growing people and letting them thrive. Want to know the best way to thrive? Allow your people to surpass you, period. Don't be the person holding somebody down, right?
Yeah. Hey, a funny example of that. I'm dealing with a couple of owners right now that have a wood shop, and they started, themselves as two guys in a garage, and they turned back the speed of their edge bander because the machine they used to work on only allowed them to do X feet or X meters per minute. Yeah. And that's my max, right? But they bought new machines that could do more, but without knowing it, by putting their own assumptions on there, they weren't letting the guys turn up the machine because nobody could ever work faster than me. And so they had it at their old setting. And I know that makes technical sense to people that run those edge bounders, but isn't that funny that we do that without even knowing it? Yeah.
We do it all the time. And I'll tell you, that's one of the main reasons why I stuck around with Innova for so long was because Lauren, who's the founder of the company and the mad scientist and inventor behind the product, is the most humble person I've ever met. Wow. He is so easily and so willingly able to say, you know what, I screwed up. You're absolutely right. And get the heck out of your way. And when you have somebody like that around you, and I say it, as somebody who looked up to somebody who, was climbing up the ladder, by having a person like that above me, was one of the greatest things ever. It motivated the crap out of me to keep going because I knew that I didn't have just some egotistical maniac who would never allow me to succeed because he always needed to be above, right?
Yeah.
And that's the coolest thing you can do.
Let me ask you an awkward question.
Sure.
Okay. I hear this a lot in the business that I do, but you said you send your people to Japan for training. They go to see the Toyota way, right? The
Yep.
The real simplicity of manufacture in an effective and efficient way. But
Yeah.
you're spending money to do that. And so
Tons.
here's the question I get. What if you go and send them to Japan and they come back and they quit and they take all of that invested knowledge and they leave your company? What
Sure.
if you train people and they leave?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have to continue. So number one, I hope that somebody leaves because I haven't done something wrong, right? It would be great to have people stay and do their entire careers, 20, 30 years and those type of things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, I would be 100% full of crap when I say that we want to grow people and we didn't allow them or thought negatively that they left after being with us to something hopefully bigger and better for them. That's how you grow people. If somebody's able to grow beyond Inova, then we've done our jobs.
Yeah.
You know how much they have provided to Inova during that time that they have been there? If somebody's able to grow and get bigger and better and move on from your company, I guarantee you they have paid you back in the weight of gold with what they have done for your company.
Yeah.
And that's, and I get it. And that's hard. I would say 4 of the people that we sent to Japan are no longer with us, but they have put systems in place and been a positive portion of our culture and society where they've paid us back tenfold.
I love it. The thing I look at is, what if I don't train them and they stay?
Oh God, it's the
What's
worst.
the cost? I know, that's where I'm going with this, is what's the cost of having somebody who's not trained, who's not in the culture? Inova clearly has a culture. I would have to fit that culture. And it was probably hard to get the culture started when you're on a sub-assembly crew. It's very difficult. But as now you're in a higher leadership position, you can impact the culture even more. But you got to start somewhere. And if you don't train your people, they're just going to stay, and you're never going to expand.
No, you're not. And that's where, we get so focused, right? Again, focus on yourself and what you can control. I can't control somebody else. So if I'm nervous or I'm worried about somebody leaving, well, then I might not have created the best environment for somebody to want to stay. So instead of continuing to focus on people wanting to leave, how about I focus on the things that I control? Well, I can control making a manufacturing facility that nobody ever wants to leave. That there isn't a bigger and better thing. We are the bigger and better thing, right? So that's how I look at it. I mean, you walk into our facility and it's like a medical facility. I mean, literally, people are like, "You guys cut wood here?" How?
You can't tell. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, "Holy cow, this is incredible!" But I will tell you that the most gratifying thing that I get is we do a huge company picnic or barbecue, and we let everybody invite their family and friends, whoever the heck they want, they can bring.
Wow.
And every single person brings their family and friends and tours them and shows them around the facility. They have so much pride.
Right.
Yeah,
I love it.
Behind the facility and what they have been a part of. It's the coolest thing to me ever.
That must be an insane recruiting tool because labor's tight right now.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, I would say 90% of our new hires are referrals.
Wow. I'm sure everybody's listening with open ears on that one.
Yeah. And what's funny enough is we have a referral program. We've had it in place ever since the beginning. If you refer somebody, they stay with us in good standing for 6 months, you get a $500 bonus.
Right.
We've had that forever. In the beginning stages, like when Inova wasn't Inova and it was just this place, never got a referrals.
Right.
The second Inova became a place where people wanted to work, the doors opened to referrals. So not everything is just a monetary motivator. They were like, the $500 didn't matter to them. They're like, heck no, do I want to tell my family or friend to come work at this place?
Yeah.
Literally, that was more important to them than the $500. But the second that it was like, oh no, you'll love it here. Come on, I'll put a good word in for you. That was worth way more to them than any monetary bonus we could give.
So what I'm hearing is it's a lot of work up front to change that culture to the way you need it to be. And then after a while, you start to see the rewards. And it sounds like those rewards are exponential. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 + 1 = 90.
Yeah, and it does. And you got to be, we have ebbs and flows. Like there will be times where, somebody slips through the cracks and gets into our facility that's not there. I mean, you've got to be very cognizant of it. And I am highly cautious and very protective, I guess is a better way of putting it, very protective of our people and our culture.
Yeah. But I would imagine in listening to you that your people would come to you and say, hey, that new guy, Jake, not going to cut it.
Right.
I don't know how to tell you this, but they probably have the confidence to come to you and say, he or she's not fitting the culture.
Yeah, 100%. And even better than just being comfortable coming to me, they also know what they've had to go through in order to come to me, right? So it's like, they can't just come in because they've had their first bad experience with somebody and be like, this person's got to go. Well, it's like, okay, why? Well, they were late today. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, did you go through the late policy with them? Have you given them a second opportunity? Have you retrained them to do it? So they know that they have to go through a substantial amount of work to eliminate the excuses before they come to me with a recommendation of letting somebody go.
I love
because
it.
they know that I'm going to come to them and be like, well, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And put it back on them. Like, hey, this might be your fault, not their fault. And we got to make sure that it is on them and they are just unwilling to change based off of everything we've tried to do for them.
Before we go forward, it's funny. I would like to go back to this episode and count how many times you said eliminate the excuses.
Yeah.
Which is all personal responsibility.
100%.
The victor-victim mentality, the Oz principle, and that stuff.
No excuses. Stop focusing on everybody else and pointing the finger because you are usually the biggest portion.
The biggest. Yeah, oh yeah, it starts with me. My business is a reflection of me, and you may have heard the saying, a fish stinks from the head down.
Yes.
Right? So as goes the leadership, so goes the team. That's a Vern Harner statement. It's so true. Hey, I want to ask you something that's going to turn this episode on its ear. Because every time we talk about lean, and today we're talking about lean leadership, we talk about the floor.
Yeah.
But what about that operations team that's doing the estimates, that's doing the bids, that's doing perhaps sales, that's doing operations, that's doing accounts receivable, payable? Where does lean fit in the quote unquote office?
Yeah.
Does it have a place there?
The office is interesting. The factory, obviously, it's low hanging fruit. You've got processes and different things in place and all that stuff. And even from, tangible physical aspect in the office, right? Like how we handle our finish samples and how we send those out to customers and those processes, right? So we go through that. But one of the biggest impacts that we have, and COVID has tried to test us on this, there's no doubt about it, is that it isn't office versus factory. We are one team, one fight.
Perfect.
And what we try to do, and I can say this comfortably with my staff hearing, because we know the office is non-value added. the factory and the people actually physically changing product, that is where all the value lies. Everything that we are doing in the office is because we haven't figured out a better way of doing it. The utopic scenario would be that we have a factory that just runs and is able to pump product out to consumers and do everything it needs to do. And, we don't need to have all this other extravagant stuff and multiple people all over the place in order to make that happen. And it's really cool. By having that mentality, we might not need to grow our office exponentially in order to fit demand. What it does is that the people that are there continue to improve their processes, be it marketing, be it sales, be it engineering, in order to make it so that, they're able to contain it within themselves. So we've actually shown that we can keep our office staff at a pretty low quantity compared to our factory staff because of having that mentality.
I love it. Hey, Guy, this has been a great interview. As a matter of fact, I think it's tough for me to find another guest who has to follow you. That's going to suck. But if somebody wants to find out more about you, maybe they want to book you as a keynote speaker, or I don't know. How are you in the world so that people can find you if they want to?
Yeah, so you can, my email is guy@innovabed.com, or you can look up innovabed.com and you'll get my contact information in there. Love to speak, love to do webinars, love to travel once we can again and get to speak to people. We also really love being able to have people come to our factory because we've got a really ton of really, really good examples there. And we love when CEOs and owners and people like that take us up on the offer and bring their management teams to us, because you get a ton of value when you do that.
Have you got a training room in there, Guy?
What's that?
Have you got a training room in your facility?
Well, we have, yeah. So we do our morning meetings. So we have a huge room where all of our staff comes together for the morning meeting. So we structure it. We have an hour of improvement time every morning. And then, because of COVID and separation and all that stuff, we've had to kind of do it broken up in groups at this point. But ultimately, pre-COVID, everybody got together in the morning. A different person led the morning meeting, and we went through the morning meeting every morning. So
maybe
people come in. Yeah.
Maybe when the world opens up again freely
Yeah.
for travel and so that we're not endangering anybody at your facility as well, maybe I'll organize an event through the podcast here and we'll come for a tour.
That'd be great.
As part of the event, you know,
Super.
like one part of it is a tour of Inova. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see you face to face again. And of course we'd have to stop by Guilderland, New York at Mixed Breed Brewing for a little refreshment. And wouldn't that be cool? Two facilities in one day that are owned by the same guy.
You'll need a drink after everything that's in Inova.
I feel like I cut you off in the how to contact us, so we can get you through inovabed.com.
Yep.
And do you do keynotes or how do?
Yeah, I do keynotes. You can reach out to me and we can touch base on keynotes and what people want to talk about and all those things. The Cabinet Makers Association just reached out to me. We're going to do a pretty funny one. That's actually what does beer brewing have to do with wood manufacturing?
Sure.
I ended up, my daughter and I had a little scare with COVID, so I ended up having to cancel it, but we're going to have that coming up. So what I really like to do is I don't like to just I'm not the guy that creates the graph presentations and looks at statistics and does all the, stuff that puts you in the snooze button. I want to talk about things that you're struggling with. So if people have a specific agenda or something that's like really just grinding them to a halt inside their facilities, I guarantee you we've been through it. We've figured it out. We've had something that we can learn from it. And we can literally gear it towards any type of issues or things that want to be talked about.
Fantastic. Well, Guy, thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I think there's been a ton of value. I know you're a great presenter. Now you're also you own a brewery as well. So that just puts you in the popular books. Once you start churning out guitars and refinishing cars, you're going to be like competing with Joe Rogan for the coolness factor.
Deal.
All right, Guy. Thank you so much for being on the show. We'll have you back again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.